Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Naomi, and today I want to share 5 poses that you can do for overall spinal health. Now, before we get started, I think it's really important to mention that while these are fantastic poses for spinal health, they're not the only things or the only poses that you can do to have a healthy spine. There are so many different ways that you can move your body and keep your spine healthy. Okay? What these poses happen to do, these 5 poses, fit into the 5 categories of overall spinal wellness, the 5 different ways that you can move your spine that keeps it really healthy. Okay? So just keep that in mind before we get started, and I hope that you enjoy them. Okay? Now, all that said, you might need a few props for the practice today. You might want a blanket for underneath your knees. You might want a block, okay, for in between your thighs later. You don't necessarily need either of them, but if your knees are more sensitive, definitely have the blanket. And I also have a chair, because for every pose that I am sharing today, I'm offering modifications, in particular if you have trouble with balance, if you have trouble getting down on the ground. So the chair variations will give you options to move with the same movements, just with a little bit more support. Okay, so all that said, let's get started. We're going to start standing. So if you are not standing, coming up to stand to join me. Okay, now you're going to stand on 2 feet, feet about hip width apart, maybe a little bit wider, and step onto your left leg. So left knee bends, and take your right leg behind your left. Okay, now again, left knee is bent, so you can see it's pretty deeply bent, and your right leg, as I turn again awkwardly, your right leg is maybe about a foot away from your left leg and slightly behind. Okay, now left hand goes to left thigh. Push your hand gently into your left thigh to create a little bit more length on your left side, and reach your right arm alongside your ear. Okay, now you're not really pushing from your left leg. Your left leg is the stable leg, right? You're pushing through your right leg. And it's that right leg behind you that's giving you the opportunity to lengthen way over to the left. Okay, and then release it, coming back through center. So you're going to step onto your right leg and take your left leg behind your right leg. Right hand goes to right thigh. Again, right knee is bent, and you can see how far behind my right leg my left leg is. Okay, it's not really that far behind. When I turn, it looks a lot further behind, but I just want you to get really clear on the fact that you're not like trying to get your foot forward. You want it to be a ways behind so that you can push into your left leg. Now, right hand is on right thigh, left arm goes alongside your ear, and you're stretching through your side body primarily. Okay, now what's really important to note about this is that this is a big side body stretch, which is fantastic for your spine, because the reminder is that your spine moves in multiple directions. There is not one best way to move your spine. Okay, now coming back to center, and you can do it again standing like this, or you can grab a chair. Okay, now the way that I'm going to share the side body stretch is sitting with your left side body next to the chair. Okay, now if you want to keep doing the standing one, please do that. Okay, but otherwise your right hand is going to go down to the seat, and you can take your left arm as you lengthen into the left side of your body into the back of the chair. You can push and lengthen. And this is just a really good one if you don't feel particularly stable on your feet, or you can't put a lot of weight on your feet. So you can lean a little bit into the left side of your chair, push into your right hand, and lengthen over to the right. And then, of course, you'd swing around to the other side. Okay, lean the right side of your body into the chair and lengthen your right arm alongside your ear. Okay? And for those of you still standing, you can finish up on the second side, and then we'll move on to our second pose. Okay, second exercise. Now we're actually going to start with the modified exercise, which is a sit to stand. We're doing squats. Okay, so if you're familiar with squats, you can start them feet slightly wider than hip width apart. Okay, you're aiming for a hinge at the hips, knees are bent, and you come back up to a neutral pelvis. Now you can see, right, the alternative, that sit to stand, is coming to sit on the chair, leaning forward again, and coming back up. Coming down to sit, leaning forward, because this is where you're getting that movement through your spine, the tilt of your pelvis, and coming back up. So whether you're doing sit to stands, okay, or whether you're doing a full squat. When I say full squat, take that with a grain of salt, because full squat is relative to you and your body. Okay, so you're squatting down and up. or you're sitting to stand and coming up. Okay? Now, you're just going to do a few more. Okay, it's really, really good to do work for your legs too, if you're going to work your spine also. Okay, so after the next one, okay, I'm going to show you the modification first. Okay, so if you can't go down to the ground for a downward facing dog, which is our next pose, our next exercise, okay, you can use the chair. Now you can place your hands on the chair, on the seat of the chair, and walk your feet back, knees bent, and push, right? You're stretching through your spine here. Okay, now it's ideal to use the seat of the chair rather than the top of the chair so that you can get a little bit more of that traction. Okay, that push down through your hands. Head can be heavy and the length through your spine. You definitely want your knees bent here. Okay, definitely knees bent. So not legs straight and a rounding through your low back. Okay, nothing wrong with that. You're just not going to get as much of that good stretch as you would with the chair, with your hands on the seat. Okay, so you can do this seated dog, right? Hands on the chair, or you can come onto your hands and knees. Take your hips back towards your heels. Hands are a little bit wider apart than your shoulders, most likely. Press through your hands, lift your knees, and stretch. And your head is heavy. So you're not looking up toward your hands. Head is heavy. And the more you push into your hands and try to stretch your hips up toward the ceiling or the sky, depending on where you are, right, the more length you're going to get through your spine. Okay, the more stretch. Whew. Remember that you can keep your knees bent. The goal is not necessarily to get your heels to the floor. Okay, not necessarily to get your heels to the floor. Okay, the goal is to create movement through your hips and a lengthening for your spine. Okay? Now, no matter where you are, you can come out of the pose. So if you're doing your chair dog, you can step up. Okay, and then I'm going to show you the modification for what we're doing next. Okay, so if you're using the chair, if you cannot get down to the floor, you're going to do a lunge in chair pose. Okay, and it's a twisted lunge. Okay, so if you are upright standing, you would take your right leg back, and you could keep your hand on the chair as you rotate your left arm up, or right hand goes down to the floor inside your left leg, and left arm goes up. Now, if you're not in the chair, and I'll show both sides, right, you can come from table, step your left foot to the outside of your left hand, right knee up, and left arm up. Okay, and you're creating a rotation through your spine. You could be up on your fingertips or down in your palm. But what's most important is that you're not letting your shoulder come with you. And I'll show that a little bit more on the other side. Right, you're really trying to rotate your torso and your spine, right, which requires your shoulders to be a bit more stable. Okay, let's switch sides. So if you're up on the chair, okay, you would step right foot forward, left leg back. And again, you could keep your left hand on the chair as you open your right arm up, or left hand down on the ground. Okay, that's totally up to you. And the same thing in this lunge. You could come from dog or from table, step your right foot up to the outside of your right hand, left knee up, right arm up. Okay, now the tendency is in the twist, if you're not using your spine as much, is to just take your whole torso towards your leg. Okay, but instead, lean back a little bit into that left arm, that left shoulder. Keep your arm bone back and rotate your torso. If it feels like too much to do with your knee up, put your knee down, right? And rotate your torso, okay? Let's take one more full breath in, full breath out wherever you are, okay? And then lower your right hand down and step up, okay? Now, you're not going to be using the chair. Well, actually, that's not true. Okay, we're going to do one more pose. We're going to do one more pose, and I'm going to show you the variation first, actually, because it does use the chair, and we're doing camel pose. Here we're doing camel pose. Camel pose is a really, really great back bend, and back bends are really, really great for spinal health, just like twists are. Really, really great for spinal health because you are creating extension for your spine, right? So I think we have this tendency to think that back bends and twists are really bad for spinal health because they could hurt us, but if you do them, if you do them well with support and stability with your legs, they won't hurt you. Okay, but you have to be able to do them well. Now, this is where you can also grab a block for both camel on the chair, camel on the ground. You put the block between your thighs to help squeeze, creating stability. You reach behind for the back of the chair, squeeze, and trying to keep your pelvis neutral, lift your chest up. Now, if you find that you can't get both arms back, you could put left hand back, right hand on your thigh, and just do this left side, and then switch and do the right side. Okay, so using the block to squeeze so your legs are stable and supportive. Now, if you can come down to the floor, okay, and for those of you doing that in the chair, you can pause, come out, and then come back in again. For those of you doing camel pose on the ground, you want a blanket underneath your knees, most likely, if your knees are divas like mine. And then you're going to take your block, if you're using it, and put it between your thighs. Again, this just gives you a little bit more support and security for your lower body, for your legs, okay? Now, squeeze the block if you're using it. If you're not using the block, you can still squeeze inward. Hands at your hips. Toes can be curled under the tops of your feet down. That's really up to you. But you want to use your hands on your hips to just squeeze in a bit and to lift your chest. Now, what you want to notice is that I'm not just arching through my lower back. Again, I'm keeping my pelvis neutral and steady. And what I'm doing is trying to lift my upper back up. Upper back up. Squeezing the block. So not even necessarily going for hands at my heels. I'm really just going for chest up. Okay? Now, if that feels like way too much for you, you can come on out. Everybody can come on out. If that feels like way too much, another really good option is simply to do, right, cat and cow, where you're getting both the flexion of your spine and the extension. Okay, so cat-cow is a little bit of a gentler way if you can be down on the ground or even seated in a chair, right? Even seated in a chair, and I'll show that really quickly, okay? So you can do cat-cow, seated, but it's a really great way to create that flexion and extension in your spine to create greater health. And the reason that I like camel pose is that in some ways it's a little bit more accessible. It also really targets your mid and upper back. Cobra is another good pose. So, just offering in this moment, Cobra is another really, really good pose that you're doing all the way down on your belly. And it's one of my personal favorites. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic for spinal health. The reason I chose camel is that it's one that you can modify in a couple of different ways. Okay, so you could use even the seat of the chair and lift your chest, right? The block between your thighs, you can come on down to your knees, or you can do cat-cow instead. Okay, so that is it, my friends. Those are the 5 poses that I am offering for you today for spinal health with all of their chair-supported variations. Okay, so I'm going to go through them again really quickly. You've got your standing or seated side body stretch. Okay, next you have your squats or your sit to stands. Okay, third one is your downward facing dog on a chair or on the ground. Fourth one are your rotations, your twists, again, either on the chair or in a lunge on the floor. Okay, and then the last one is a back bend. Now, I offered camel as a back bend, either in the chair or on your knees. You could also do cat-cow or cobra, right? Or so many other back bends. I love back bends, but that is a video for another time. But those are your 5 exercises that you can do on the chair and off. I hope that you find them useful. I hope that your spine feels really happy after this practice, and I look forward to seeing you back on the mat again really soon. All right, until then, bye everyone.